Hi, and welcome to Moral Lit Literary Deep Dives and Discussions with me, A.L. Liskey, the author of the Lattice Scheme, the Unseen Operative series. Today's podcast is going to be pretty exciting. I will be discussing today one of the biggest themes throughout the series, and so you are not going to want to miss this. I'm not going to go off and tell you the exact topic. Just stick around, and I would ask you to stick to the end because some of this is going to be hard. Hard not as in it difficult to discuss per se, but hard because this topic in general is not a light one by any means. It's very much intended to be self-reflective, and although it will be looked at on sort of a macro level, my goal is for everyone to kind of take a deep look inside of themselves at a micro level, because these are the things that are most applicable. It begins with chapter 3, but there are prominent parts of this, as I've mentioned, throughout the book, throughout the series. This is not going to go away. It's a very, very pivotal point. So it begins in chapter 3, page 44 on the first version of the book. I think the new version might be page 45. I will have to double check that. Detective Granger in this scene is talking to Azure, trying to get her to kind of go along with his little investigation, let's say. He says this: if you saw someone about to jump off a bridge, would you just stand by and let them throw themselves into their untimely death because it is their right to manage their life as they please? Would you sit by idly while a grown man hands a child a loaded gun, telling them to have fun with it? Sometimes, Miss Prescott, pursuing justice for the sake of what is morally right is far more important than adhering to a man-made code of ethics. Just looking at that context, the thing I want to foremost focus on is if you saw somebody about to jump off a bridge, would you respect their decision because it's their life? Can you see how this problem exists today? Can you see how this problem of permitting people to do things because it's their own life is a problem in society, in your own life, on a global scale? I would submit to you that it is a problem in many aspects, but let's talk about human life. Do we recognize that our lives individually are more than our own? Can you measure the impact of your own life? You might not be able to see it, but from the very moment that you are born, you impact a mother, a father, potentially siblings, grandparents, a doctor, a neighbor, a nurse, a class, a community in some way, ways that you will probably never see. Your life has impacted those people. I can tell you that even though I might not remember all of the names of the classmates that I had in certain classes in elementary or junior high, I can tell you that they were there, and at the time, it mattered that they were there. Even if I didn't like them, even if they were somebody I never associated personally with, the fact that they were there mattered. It was part of my life. That person was part of my life. I may not remember the nurse that delivered me or the doctor, but they were part of my life, and my life impacted their life. It was part of their job, yes, but they saw me. Every day, we intermingle with other human beings. We are part of their lives in that moment. We impact them in some way, whether it be a passing moment, a week, a year, by association at work, temporary job, temporary trip, any of that. Anytime you interact with another human being, your life has impacted theirs. And I would submit to you that a good portion of our lives have a heavier impact on others than we know. Prime example, many of us have experienced this, and if you haven't, I would ask that you experiment with it. If you've had a bad day, or you know somebody who's having a bad day, or maybe you don't know someone who's having a bad day, receiving a smile or a hello from somebody when you're in a pit of despair or just going through a rough time changes things. It might change the crappiest day into something wonderful. I've had those days. I've also had days where I just smiled at somebody and I don't know how it affected them, but I felt good for smiling for the most part. I mean, there's sometimes I felt awkward, but I've never regretted smiling at somebody. Like, I've never had somebody come up to me and be like, hey, what are you smiling about? And, beat me up or whatever. Like, that doesn't happen. Why? Because kindness is never wasted, but it does make all the difference. It makes a profound difference. For those of us who experience severe loneliness, being talked to makes the difference. Our lives really do impact each other in ways that we'll never see. I'm currently in a certification for a health life coach program. I was working with this lady the other day. I won't share names or details too much. It was interesting to me because she was telling me that without realizing it, throughout her life, she's helped many people. And she was describing to me how she just have these conversations with these individuals, think nothing about it. And then a couple weeks later, a couple months later, for a couple of them, it was like a year, they'd come up to her and they'd say, hey, because you said this or gave me this advice, this has been different in my life. Or they've pursued different paths and they mention, oh, you had a huge impact in that. I have an experience with that too. About a year ago, I attended a wedding of a very dear friend. I say stay very dear. We weren't close as in like buddy, like I know your favorite color or any of that. We shared the same values and we were part of the same group, even though we weren't close within that group, but we knew each other well enough. And for some reason, I'm not sure how, I impacted her well enough that she invited me to her wedding. And at her wedding, she hugged me and she said, it's part of this happening is because of you. And I was like, what? What do you mean by that? It wasn't the time or place to have that conversation. Maybe I should hit her up and have that conversation. I am curious now that I remember it, because we never really see how much we impact each other, but our lives matter. Why am I sharing this? Because if a person is about to jump off a bridge and you're just going to let them do it because it's their right, here is the question. Is it their right to do with their life, whatever they want? Is it really? Is it their right alone? And the reason I ask that is because if you honestly believe that it is our right to do whatever we want with our life, uncontingent, uncompared to anyone else, like without regard, then I would ask you this. What is it inside of you that recoils when someone commits suicide or changes their lifestyle to become something or someone so completely different from the person that you knew that they were, that they're no longer recognizable to you? Or maybe does something that goes against every single value that they've ever had a conviction for? What is it inside of you that recoils? This isn't a common situation, but have you ever met somebody or known somebody who wasn't a bad person by any means, and then you found out that they did something terrible? They broke the law in some terrible way. Maybe they hurt someone else in some terrible way. Recoils inside of you. Like, that feeling. For those who know me personally, saying that my father had abused me, yeah, that causes some serious discomfort. I can tell you it does, because there's been a lot of denial that happened around that, and so many folks refuse to acknowledge it or have even started rumors against us for saying it. Why? Because it's just not right. It doesn't sit well with us, because that person affected our lives. Just going on my example of my father. Yes, my father was abusive to me, my siblings, my mother, in several different ways, but he did good things for other people. He did. I was a firsthand witness to those things. He helped a lot with computers. He helped a lot with, service. He did a lot of good in helping people when they were in difficult situations. He's done good in his life. That doesn't excuse him from the bad that he did to me and my siblings and my mother and the trauma that we still experience from that. I share that because those people who only knew that good side of him recoil when they find out that, he had a right to do whatever he wanted with his life, but his right to do that violated mine. And suddenly it hurts their lives too, because this person that I knew isn't who I thought they were. That happens when somebody commits suicide, when somebody goes against the person that you knew that they were. So that's why I ask, is it their right to do whatever they like with their lives? Just want you to sit with that for a while. It will be a topic that comes up again and again. I'm not going to give a single answer, because guess what? I don't know everything. It's literally just a question to talk about, to discuss, to explore within ourselves. And that is why it is a topic of the book. Now, rights in general is the topic of the book, not specifically to make any political stance. I'm 100% not trying to make any political stance whatsoever. That's not my goal. And so I hope while you're listening to that, you might see that this doesn't swing either way. This is literally just a human discussion. But let's go on to page 417 in the first version. Something that Wagner says that is quite incredible along this point. He says, there it is, the natural American independence in you, freedom of choice, unlimited options, the very thinking that perpetuated the onset of the Third World War. Freedom is not truly freedom when everything is fair game. People scream for rights, yet show no interest in responsibility. It seems after a war that the lesson must still be learned that too much irresponsibility brings destruction. Right there. Let's just pause right there for a second. We're screaming for rights with no interest in responsibility. That's it. You cannot discuss rights without discussing responsibility. And the problem is, it's too prevalent that responsibility is not discussed. We so badly want rights. We so badly want what we deserve. Here's the words that matter the most. What we deserve, what we expect, what we are entitled to, but we don't want the responsibility. Now, inherently, we might be like, wait a minute, I accept responsibility, but I would ask us all to really think about this. Do we? Do we want responsibility? Because being accountable is uncomfortable. It is really, really uncomfortable to be accountable. And yet it's also truly freeing. I don't know how many of you have ever lived, or maybe are. I hope that you are. I would hope that we all are, but I can't even honestly say this for myself right now. But if you've ever lived an entirely honest life to everybody around you, including yourself, between you, God, and man, you are 100% honest. There is a huge relief in that There's a peace in that. It's powerful. It's profound. If you've ever lived in a state like that, even for a moment, I've had those moments. I've had weeks like that actually. And I am trying to get back there because I'm human. I make mistakes, but this isn't about me. This is about us in general. If you've ever had those moments of living in full integrity, completely honest, you know life is fantastic. That is the peak. It doesn't matter how much money you're making, your living circumstances. If you know inside and out that you are honest, there is that peace that they talk about scripturally that surpasses all understanding. It's profound. It's beautiful. It's desirable above everything else in the world to have that inner peace. It's empowering. That's what we want. But that honesty only comes with full accountability. And the problem is we as humans, we don't like accountability. We really don't. Why is that? Those words that I used earlier, deserved, entitled to, these are words that enter our minds often, especially whenever suffering is involved or difficulty. I can look at my past and I can say, I deserved a better father. I was entitled to it. Why didn't I have that? For seasons of isolation due to my health issues or other things, I have, and this is one of the things that I currently struggle with. I have often thought to myself and told myself that I deserve better. Why? Because I'm a good person. I know I'm a good person. I'm not saying that just to aggrandize myself. I love people. I want to do good in the world. God has given me incredible talents and abilities that I know can help so many, and I want to do that. And it kills me inside that I can't, or that I tell myself I can't. I get bitter about these things, and then I just keep using those phrases. I deserve. And maybe you're in a situation like that too. When an injustice happens, how many of us do not use the word deserve? Or when we're trying to uplift others who have been or are going through a difficult situation, we say, you deserve better. That relationship didn't work out. You deserve better. Sure, who can make that call? I don't know, but that's not the point, is accountability. Is anybody else accountable for how I think in my circumstance? Do they have a right to determine my outcome or my circumstance? No, that right is mine. Have I been deprived of rights because of the injustices happening to me? No. So where does the accountability lie? My father was accountable for his actions. I am accountable for my actions. And here's the grand epiphany that I would submit to you. When we're on trial, especially, if you're Christian like me and you believe in an afterlife, if you're on trial on Judgment Day, or just in trial in front of a judge, who is it that you're answering for when there's a mistake that you've done? Just you. Are they comparing you to anybody else's mistakes around the situation? No. Justice doesn't look at what he or she did and decide, okay, she's the lesser of two evils, and so she gets to go scotch-free and he gets to serve 20 years. In a flawed human system, yeah, sometimes that happens. But realistically speaking, everybody who gets on trial for doing something gets a punishment. Right? I am accountable for my bitterness, and that is the reality. In my unjust situation, I have the right to be bitter or not, don't I? No, I don't. Why? Because my life impacts others. I don't have a right to do something that harms other people, and my bitterness is in fact harming other people. It harms my spouse, it harms my spirit, it harms those that I talk to when I speak bitterly or cynically. It robs them of opinions that they could probably form on their own. I don't have a right to be bitter about my life. I am accountable, fully accountable for what I'm doing in my circumstance, for what I'm choosing to believe and think and do within my circumstance. And that's the thing that I'm trying to get at, is I want the right to control my life, right? I want the right to control my circumstances, but I don't want to be accountable for mistreating that. So maybe I do have a right to complain. In a way, if I'm neglecting to admit that other people are affected by my life. If in that case I have a right to complain about my life, then why am I not holding myself accountable for making myself bitter? You see what I did there? If you take at face value what I just said, you might be a little bit confused. Wait, you're saying that I don't have a right in my life, and now you're saying that I do? What I'm saying is, which perspective are you on right now? Can you see it from both sides? Can you see both sides of the coin that I'm talking about? That maybe I do have a right because it is my life, and maybe I also don't have a right because it affects other people's lives. Can we stop and consider, okay, where there's a right, there has to be accountability, and who is accountable for what here and when? That's what I'm offering to you. I'm offering you a little complexity of mind between these rights and responsibilities. But yes, it is, regardless of where the rights are placed, accountability, responsibility is tied to it somewhere. And we don't like to admit as human beings that anytime that we have a right or we perceive we have a right, very often we do not like to be responsible for it. We like to scapegoat. We like to blame. Let's go a little bit longer with what happens on chapter 3, following what Granger says, a little thought that Azure has. She says it was a valid point. Moral ethics versus institutional ethics were frequently a complex dilemma. It reminded Azure of a classic debate often discussed at the collegiate level. If a poor man's wife were dying and there was a facility holding the cure, which he could never afford or obtain by any means, is it right for him to steal it to save her life, even if it incriminates him? Or should he let her die despite her wishes and his own moral convictions? There's a pickle. How many of you have heard that one before? It's a common ethical debate. I remember it from, we talked about in psychology. I think it was in sociology as well, family policy, just so many courses over the years. So the question is, if I'm in the husband's shoes, do I have the right to save my wife's life? I have the right to try to save her life, yes. Am I accountable to cure her? No. Is the government accountable to cure her? No. Is she? No. But is she accountable for what she chooses to do and accept, what she receives and what she puts out? Yes. Am I accountable for what I put out and receive? Yes. So here's the tricky question. Am I taking away her right and accountability, not just of choice, but a life free from the fear of her husband being hauled off to jail or being placed in jail as an accessory of a crime if I, by being a gallant hero, go forth, steal the cure to save her life? Whose rights am I violating there? Who's accountable? You see, all mysteries, all crimes, they're based on some form of dishonesty. Some form of dishonesty or someone being unaccountable or trying to avoid accountability for oneself or depriving accountability of others and rights of others. Dishonesty is always involved. And thinking about that scenario, it is not selfless to lie. It's not honorable to refuse accountability, especially in the name of personal rights. You cannot have a choice without a consequence, whether it be good or bad, whether you can foresee them or not. That's just the reality. And I would submit to you that more often than not, if we would pause and really try to think and have the curiosity to ask ourselves, what am I not seeing that there could be seen in this situation? We would find that a lot of the consequences are blatantly before us and that we have the power to choose and determine and see where things are going to go. Now, things never play out exactly as we expect. Fact of life. That's the ludicrousness of life that I've talked about before. We might try with the good, honest intent to do things well, and because we live in a world with other people and other things that just happen, they might not work out. But as far as what we can control, we can see how our actions are going to affect us. And we can often see, if we consider very carefully, how those actions are going to immediately affect those closest to us. Something I'm about to say, if you're not already a little perturbed by this or upset, I would still ask you to hold your anger, listen, just think things out, then react, because you can choose to do that. You can choose how you react. But here's the question. Do we actually want all the rights we profess to? I would submit that as a society, we generally don't. And the reason that I say that is because I've come to several conclusions in the past weeks that although there are many rights that I am responsible for, my finances, my healthcare, my fitness, what I eat, nutritionally, all that, I'm very good at being accountable for that. And that is a skill that I've learned. In fact, any accountability is a skill all of us can learn. That is the fact and reality. But because I'm human, I've come to realize that there are so many things that I have not been accountable for, that I've been denying myself accountability of and acting like I have the right to pursue without taking that accountability. And things that I've said and things that I've thought and things that I've done that I refuse to be accountable for. But at the end of the day, or rather, when my eyes have been opened up to recognize these things, I realize I am accountable, and my own misery is my own fault because I've been putting off that accountability. I've been dishonest with myself. Using that word again, deserved. I've been embittered over things that should have happened because I am a good person and I did everything right that I could have. I've tried hard and I've tried often, but you know what? My life isn't over, and I gave up trying some things and became bittered. And I'm accountable now for my own misery because of that. And my blame on other people because of that. Do I actually want the right that I profess to, the right to judge others? No, because I can tell you that sitting with this responsibility that now is on me for my own actions and my thoughts and choices, this is so uncomfortable. I did not want this. I would say if I wasn't ignorant at the time, I wouldn't have made this mistake. But the reality is I'm without excuse, because this is such a basic lesson we learn since we're little, that we're responsible. And yet we dishonestly blind ourselves from those things, so that when it occurs to us that, by the way, I have this power in me and I'm choosing to make myself miserable in my circumstance, it's like a stab in the back. It hurts. Suddenly responsibility hurts because I wasn't willing to consider and to take it when I decided to use my rights and make a choice. Do we actually want the rights we profess to? Am I willing to receive benefits that I perceive are good and will help me, but not be accountable for the cost that will have to be borne on others around me because of that? Am I unwilling to extend the same so that others can have that benefit when I don't? Am I wanting something so that I can have ease, but not willing to pay the price of that ease? Or am I unwilling to pay the price so that other people can have ease and expecting the same? Complications, you know? On an everyday scale, we balance with these. We call it compromise. Isn't that a fun word? Compromise. There's always give and take in things. And that is true. Compromise is good. But you know what's even better? Is collaboration. Collaboration is better because when we're collaborating, everybody is being responsible. Everybody is using their rights and responsibility, hopefully equally. But when we're compromising, generally speaking, there's usually something there that somebody does not want the full weight of. What is it that you don't want the full weight of? I've been reading this book about divorce. I'm really into family studies, so these topics fascinate me. But it's interesting in a divorce how everybody's got their sides and I'm right and she's wrong and he's right and she's wrong. And, you know, it's all the scapegoating again, but not in every circumstance. But in this one that I'm reading about, in this particular study, neither want to take any accountability for their actions. Neither want to be accountable for putting up bridges in the marriage or causing disgruntles or any of that. These are very micro things that happen, everyone. Like the little things that I do every day, I am accountable for. It's overwhelming now that I'm hyperanalyzing them. This is being human. I'm not asking you to hyperanalyze yourself. You know, that goes into a religious conversation about grace. But the point is accountability. We have to have it because if we do not choose actively to exercise our rights with the intent and the awareness that there is an accountability factor on us in it, it's gonna hurt. And that's what we're trying to avoid as humans. We so strongly don't want the pain of bad choices and mistakes. How many times might you have used jokingly, you know, decide for me, or great example, therapy sessions. My gosh, therapy. We want somebody to solve our problems for us. We want the therapist to tell us what to do, how to fix ourselves, how to fix our lives, etc. And then we come out disappointed when, you know, therapy isn't working because my life hasn't been fixed. You're right. It's not working, but it's not because of the therapist. If your life hasn't changed, if you haven't changed, that's not on the therapist. That's on you. And I'm telling myself this right now because I've been to therapy before and I have not changed because I am obstinate, very obstinate. And that's why it hurts when the accountability comes at you, because no one else can be blamed for what we decide to do and not do. Just food for thoughts. We all want to live having our credit card and school debt paid off, but we don't want to put in the hard stake and pain of trying to get it there. When you're in debt for anything, how much of that are you being accountable for, honestly? For some of us, we will find with some deep soul searching that honestly, we are victims. For others, the hard truth might be that you're not, and that hurts. But kind of like the thorn in the side that we talked about in our very first episode, if that thorn is not removed, you'll never have peace. You'll keep being accountable for that mistake again and again and again until that thorn is removed. That's life. That's reality. You don't have the right to make a choice without being accountable and dealing with the consequences. You do, however, have a right and a responsibility to deal with those consequences. And when you do it well, or you try your best, peace happens. That relief happens. Here's another cute thing is we all want accountability buddies. I don't have a problem with accountability buddies. I am a very strongly independent person. Maybe Azure gets that part from me. I think Alma does more. But strongly independent person. I struggle when people hold me accountable, but it matters to me when they do. Some of the sternest lectures in my life have only been 1 or 2 words or just a sentence from my grandmother, from my mother, from a peer. And it has stung so hard. And it has made all the difference them calling me out to be accountable for my own actions. That shock, I needed that so that I could pull my thorn out and start being accountable, and it made all the difference. So right now, I have a thorn in me right now that has been made known to me, not by any human being, but I'm in the process right now of trying to pull it out. And it's very painful because I have chosen to leave it there festering for quite a while, but it hurts. Accountability buddies, though, they help. They really do help. Therapists, coaches, accountability buddies, spouses, friends, when they're able to help point out that there is something that you can do, when your mind is suddenly incited to the fact that you not only have a right, but you have a responsibility to do something, that you have this power in you. Wow. Yes, it's hard. Yes, it hurts, but wow, is it empowering. It is massively empowering, and it's also humbling to recognize that I have that power in me. I can be the adult. I can make these hard choices. I can do these hard things. I might not want to do them, and they might be hard, but I have that power. Now, flip side of accountability buddies, because we're looking at both sides of the coin here. That's the point of the Unseen Operative series. We have to always look at multiple sides. Two sides of the coin, sure, that'll be the general premise of things that I go on, is looking at two sides, but sometimes we're going to look at three or more sides. For today, we're going to attempt to keep it simple because this is already complex enough. But accountability buddies, nobody is going to truly hold you accountable at the end of the day. They're going to fail sooner or later. Why? Because nobody knows you like you know you. I can't blame somebody else for not holding me up for a shortcoming that they don't see. And like I said, at the end of the day, at Judgment Day, it's me and the judge for my crimes. He's not going to pull in someone else and be like, oh, you're not as bad as this person, so I'm going to give you a lenient charge. No, I am accountable. My accountability buddy is not going to go on trial with me. I mean, even in a modern court of law, they never pull in the accessory of the crime with, the person being taken in. They come at two separate times to both be questioned individually and separately, because individually we are accountable at the end of the day. As great as accountability buddies are, in some ways, I feel like as a society, we hold that as an excuse, as a scapegoat. Just another example, I'm a person that I very dearly love and admire and respect profoundly has come to me several times and mentioned that I think I need a personal manager, or I just need someone or something to keep me on track. And this person has said this to me again and again and again. And my reply to this person has nearly always been the same. But I just kind of looked at this person and I said, you can do that. You can manage your time well. You can, there are apps, there are methods, you can try X, Y, and Z. It makes no sense to go out of your way to hire somebody to do something that you can do yourself. Because the things that this person wanted help on are things that I have personally pushed myself to develop a skill to be self-accountable for. So I know by experience that it's not only possible to develop that skill for those things, but that it's 10 times more rewarding than finding an accountability buddy. Now, some of us will need accountability buddies to get the wheel started, but ultimately the idea of all these accountability buddies is what? That you become self-reliant, self-accountable, that you develop the skill, that you are empowered, because ultimately you are accountable, not them. Maybe that's the pill of health coaching for me. I love cheering people on, but I will not be held responsible for whether or not their problems are resolved. Why? Because that is not in my power. But because my life does affect theirs, I have a right to encourage them to find that power in themselves. And I have a responsibility to do that well so that they can find that and feel supported. Okay, back to the Lattice scheme. World War III. I know America was mentioned in there. Please keep in mind that as an American, when you live in a certain country and a war has happened, especially a world war, the perspective you are foremost seeing is that of your own nationality, your own nation, your own community, surroundings, where you are. What I did not say was that America started the World War. And I will never tell you who started it. Spoiler. Why? Because it's about rights and accountability. It's never one person, it's never one country that causes a war. Just like that divorce article that I've been reading. It's never just one person. Everyone who is involved is accountable for their own actions, their own reactions. Self-defense, yes, that is a thing. But where is your heart and intent in it? It's hard for us as a human society to separate out perpetrators and victims, because a lot of times victims choose to be victims, perpetrators choose to be perpetrators, and sometimes perpetrators choose to be victims. Being human is messy, y'all, because it comes down to an individual level. We're so busy trying to judge situations of others instead of looking at ourselves. World War III is really kind of a large metaphor of our lives. We're looking so hard to hyperanalyze and help others around us before we really help heal ourselves. I'm involved in World War III in that sense, and I'm accountable for me, just as you're accountable for you, except I need to stop comparing what I'm doing to what you're doing. or in reaction to what you're doing. I'm accountable for being honest about what I do and say and think, and doing my honest best with it, and trying to add the curiosity to find the things that I haven't thought of or known or seen to do, to learn, to grow out of ignorance and mistakes, to be better. Humility. That's what ends wars, is humility. My lack of complete peace to or with others is always my responsibility. I can't make others peaceful. I'm accountable for ensuing peace on my end always, just as each country involved in a war is accountable for how and what they do in it. Accountability, like I said, is a hard topic. And I want to be clear that I'm not saying that everybody is bad. Not at all. Yes, we make mistakes. What I'm saying is that we're all on the same boat. And that should really give us a stronger connection with one another. If we turn inside, start fixing ourselves, start considering others with care and a love and a compassion, the way that we want to be treated, that golden rule, we're going to find that we all have something in common, that we all can connect. There's a hidden worth in there that when we stop trying to hyperanalyze and fix justice the way that we've been taught it or perceived it, instead start with honesty inside ourselves and about. There's a human connection there that is powerful and meaningful, a gift beyond words that is worth finding. Being accountable does not equate bad. Responsibility does not equate bad. And that is something that needs to change in society as a whole, globally, is connecting those two words together. Accountability equals bad. There's some other definitions that I would challenge us all to reconsider. Pain equals bad. Does it? This is going to come in the second book of the Unseen Operative series. Pain does not equal bad. Pain is a signal. Sometimes it signals that, actually a lot of times, it signals that something is tearing, something is breaking apart. There's an error in the system. Errors aren't always bad, y'all. Mistakes are not always bad. Sometimes it's just a learning jump. Pain is like that too. Pain is a signal that healing needs to occur. Something needs to be addressed. It's a signal. That's it. So pain can be good. Healing pains are great. When I'm lifting weights and I'm feeling that pain, yes, it's muscle tearing. And is that bad? Not really. I mean, if I severely injured myself, yes. But if I'm doing it properly, that pain is good. It's giving me, the breakdown needed to start the strengthening process. I like that pain. I do. Sometimes stretching pains are really good. Suffering. We equate suffering with bad. Suffering in definition is not always bad. The suffering that I'm going through because I'm accountable for my choices is hard, as in difficult, but it's not bad because it's shaping me into a better person. It's going to help me to gain the skill and correction that I need to grow from this mistake, not to be perfect in it, but to become so much better than I've previously been. It's that step closer to that peace that I want, that connection to humans and to those around me that I need, the peace that passes understanding. Responsibility equals hard. No, it's actually really not hard to be responsible at all. It's not difficult. We make it difficult in our minds because we're, like I said, busy hyper-analyzing what she thinks, what he thinks, and what are the outcomes of the situation. We immediately assume the worst because our flight and fight mode, our sympathetic nervous system, immediately starts signaling danger, danger when we're in trouble. And so we do things or we act in ways that are irresponsible because suddenly our fight and flight mode is telling us that it will be hard to be responsible. The outcomes are bad. I see bad, 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 red light, alert, jump ship. But I wonder, in those moments, if we were to calm ourselves, tap into the parasympathetic nervous system, rest and digest, be calm, kind of see things out, you might find that there are a lot of options that being responsible is actually going to be not only easy, but better. So responsibility, is it hard? Difficulty-wise? Not necessarily. Sometimes it can be. It can be hard to be responsible, like in moments where you realize that you've been irresponsible and you have to fix it. This is a hard road to walk. It's worth it. So in that case, responsibility does not equal bad. Honesty does not equal bad. Honesty does not equal hard, unless you make it hard. You're accountable for your own difficulty level and all these things. That's what I'm saying with these definitions. Work is only as hard as you make it. If it's hard for you to go to your job, ask yourself why. Is it difficult because you legitimately have barriers that prevent you from getting there, but your attitude is good? Or is it hard because your attitude is just not great? Or it's a place that you don't feel like you belong? In those situations, what are you accountable to do? What can you do? What do you have a right to do? Food for thought. What's really bad and hard is lying and dishonesty and irresponsibility. So as a writer, I can tell you because I'm writing mystery. And as I've said, all these conflicts, all of these crimes, they come from a form of dishonesty and deprivation of responsibility or, the rights thereof. The moment that a character lies or is dishonest, the moment I write a crime, it is complicated. It is very complicated, and it takes a great deal of energy, time, writing, sketching out, connecting to keep track of all of these lies and deceits, how they're exposed, their motives, how they're covering it, all of that. I have to keep track of all of these ends as an author of a mystery, while the reader could just, you get to explore and you get to try to figure it out, and that's fun and exciting. But let's be honest here, it is utterly complicated. So complicated. And you know what? I have an advantage of it being easier in fiction than it is in real life, because as an author, I have control over the full world that I'm writing. I have the power to see all the individuals, and by the way, that in itself is mind-ripping sometimes. In real life, you and I don't have that perspective. Nevertheless, the principle is the same. The moment that dishonesty happens, it is complicated. Even if we can't see it, especially because we cannot see it, we can know for a sure fact that it is complicated, and it gets more complicated. One form of dishonesty always leads to another if it's not immediately addressed. And the more and more that it happens, because the lack of responsibility is there again and again and again, because we don't want to be accountable for our lives. We just want to, easy way out of this. Keep avoiding responsibility, and it gets more and more complex to the point that you have literally tied so many knots around who you are that peace seems impossible. And going back to the beginning, it very much affects others. And on the topic of suicide, because that is a huge topic in the second book, that can be a huge struggle, because when you feel that trapped, the only way you can honestly perceive out at times is to get yourself out of it. Now, I'm not saying suicides are all caused by lies. They're not. I want to make that blatantly clear. They're not. The only reason it's brought up as an analogy is because that is the feeling, that choking feeling. Though for a different cause, the choking feeling is very much the same. Look at that. Empathy. If you can consider that, you could probably do well to reach out and uplift others in that situation if you understand what choking's like, when that much complexity is drowning you, regardless of the cause. That is a human connection there. So when we're dishonest and unaccountable, our lies increase difficulty, increase complexity, decrease peace, decreases communication, decreases happiness, and our lives impact others because our lives are not our own. We don't have a right to not be accountable because it infringes on the rights and lives of others always. Like I said, not a single one of us does not impact another human being. So when we're looking at a person jumping off a bridge and we think to ourselves, I don't want to do anything because it's their right what they do with their lives. Is it? And what about yours? Is it not your right and responsibility to do something? Because the moment that person does anything against themselves, it hurts so many others. Do we not have a right and responsibility as humans? Are we not obligated to one another in a form of kindness to bring peace, not just in ourselves, but to each other? The very sanctity of life screams that. Again, that recoil feeling that I mentioned at the beginning. Does that not get you? So that is the huge theme of the Lattice scheme, part 1. There will be other huge themes, but rights and accountability. Where do I as an individual stand? Am I willing to let go of my perceptions holding me back from an honest accountability to God and to others around me? Am I willing to take responsibility, to take freedom for me, and not just for me, but for all of those that I impact? I would submit to you that the most selfless thing that you could possibly do this day and always, the most noble, heroic thing that you could possibly do and mature, is to take responsibility for your rights. Because if we don't, especially today, it matters so much today. If we don't learn this lesson, that there is no rights without responsibility, individually and specifically, and then outward to one another, then we as humans will continue to repeat history in ourselves and around ourselves, and it will impact us and our communities and the world.